All right. Happy Sabbath, everybody. Today we're still going to continue about the divergent views of A.F. Ballenger, right? Last week we did within the veil, right? Remember within the veil? A.F. Ballenger says within the veil means within the second veil, right? And he did a lot of proof texting methods to prove that the within the veil is actually the compartment of the most holy place. So his contention is that when Jesus went back to heaven, he went directly to the right hand of God and sat at the right hand of the throne of God in the most holy place. All right, that's within the veil. All right, so I downloaded the book of A.F. Ballenger and I started reading it, and I said, wait a minute, you know what? He has one whole chapter about the throne of God. I should do this throne of God because it's a big argument that a lot of people could not defend. And all they can do is just say, well, our pioneers believe that the throne of God is in the holy place, right? Also, right? Okay. You know what? We need to defend it ourselves, right? Because of that, we're going to do it. We are going to do it. All right. The right hand of God. This is A.F. Ballenger's. Defense of what he believed Jesus did when he went to heaven. And A.F. Ballenger said that he went right to the right hand of God in the most holy place. All right, let's read a little about it. And Cast Out of the Cross of Christ, 1909. Right, you can download this book. It's pretty good reading. There's a few things that he misquoted, and I fact checked it, but otherwise it will be used. I'm telling you, it will be used against us if we want to defend the sanctuary in heaven. All right. The scripture of truth again and again declare in the most explicit terms that Christ at his ascension went directly to the Father's throne. Wow. And this he must do that the scriptures be not broken, for God himself by the mouth of David had long ago published to the world that he would invite his son to share his throne when he returned from the earth after completing the work of redemption. Here's the invitation. The Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. Okay? Sit thou at my right hand. Right? So he's basically using, and his argument is about the right hand of God. Right? And he's using the verse from Psalms 110, verse 1. Okay? So he says that Jesus went to the right hand of God, which is on his throne, right after he went back to heaven, right? And that's where he has been ministering ever since. So that is his argument, all right? And these are the verses that he takes. Obviously, he's very well versed in using proof text method, right? Proof text method. So you have the proof text method of our pioneers, and A.F. Ballenger uses the same thing. So he uses Acts 2, verse 34 and 35. Okay, what's Acts 2? Acts 2 is the Pentecost. What happened after the Pentecost? Peter spoke in front of all the people, right? He spoke in front of all the people and said, you know what? Jesus has been crucified, and now where is he? He is ascended to heavens, All right. So and Peter said, "For David is not ascended into heavens, but he says himself, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou on my right hand until I make thy foes thy footstool." So this is Peter's argument of where Jesus is. That after Jesus died and went to heaven, Jesus said now is on the right hand of God, sitting at the right hand of God. All right, some other verses, it's all in Hebrews, right? Hebrews 1 verse 2 and 13, right? But to which of my angels? You know, the angels cannot do this. It's only the Son of God that can do this. Sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. All right, Hebrews 8 verse 1. Now of these things which we have spoken, this is the sum. Okay, this is the sum. This is the summary. Now, if you read this in the Revised Version or the American Standard Version of the Bible, it says, "Now the things we are saying, the chief point is." The chief point. What is the sum of all these things? What is the most important part of this doctrine? That Jesus is the high priest, and what is Jesus doing? He has sat on the right hand of the throne of majesty in heaven, right? This is the chief point. This is the point. This is the sum, right? Okay, this is what's Paul's argument, all right? Because the Jews wanted to defend all the time the Aaronic tabernacle and the Aaronic services, but Paul says now, we are now Christians. We have to know that the Aaronic tabernacle and its services have been nullified. It's no longer valid anymore, and that Jesus now is the high priest, all right, in heaven, sitting at the right hand of God. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice, after Jesus had died on the cross as a sacrifice, what did he do? He sat down on the right hand of God. So after he gone to heaven, he sat down at the right hand of God, right? All these. This is directly from the book, basically his proof texting, right? All right, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, all right, Hebrews 12:2, who for the joy that set before him endured the cross. Right? He endured the cross, and then what did he do? He is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. All right, which Ephesians 1 verse 20, which he wrought in Christ when he raised him from the dead, right? After the Father raised Jesus from the dead, he set him at his own right hand in Heavenly Father. So we know when this happens. This happens when Jesus have gone to heaven, right? But when is it that his enemies will be his footstool? That will be later, right? That will be later, right? Okay, Colossians 3 verse 1. If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth at the right hand of God. He died and he was risen, and then he sits at the right hand of God. Well, we get so many proof text verses. Right? And then what did Stephen do? 3.5 years after Jesus went to heaven, right? He saw Jesus standing on the right hand of God. And the Son of Man standing on the right hand of God, because why? Because at that time there's a change of dispensation. All right, so we understand that when Jesus stands, prophetically it means Jesus is, there is a change in dispensation, right? There's a change in dispensation. Okay. All right. So this is a very crucial verse. We will find out why. All right. Revelation 3 verse 21. Revelation 3:2-1. Okay. Revelation 3:2-1. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and am set down with my Father in his throne. Right? So for those who overcome, Jesus has given them a promise that you will be able to sit with me on my throne, because I have overcome, and because I have overcome, I have died and have been risen, and I've gone to heaven. Now I am set down with my Father in his throne. Right? So for the overcomers, they are promised that they will sit with Jesus on the throne. All right? Okay. All right. This is what I said. What this is cast out for the of Christ, for the cross of Christ. Okay. This is A.F. Ballenger's book. Right? Page 5. The next all-important question is, which apartment of the heavenly sanctuary contains the throne of God? Which apartment is the throne room of Jehovah? All right. Okay, we know where he's going. Right? He is going to prove that the throne of God is only in the most holy place. Right? He is going to disprove what the pioneers teach, that there is a throne of God in the holy place. Right? He is trying to prove. Right? And he's using proof text here, and he's actually going to use Ellen White quotes. Right? All right. So we know that where the throne of God is where God dwells, where God sits. Right? Exodus 25, verse 8 and 9. And let them make a sanctuary that I may dwell, so that I may dwell among them. All right? And this sanctuary on earth is a type of the sanctuary in heaven, because the pattern of the tabernacle was the heavenly sanctuary, right? So if there's a dwelling place for God on earth, there's got to be a dwelling place of God in heaven, all right? And where does God dwell? All right, Exodus 25. Yeah? And there, and thou shalt put a mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee. And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat. This is, God communes with us from the place where he dwells, which is from his throne is the mercy seat, which is above the ark of the testimony, which contains the 10 Commandments, right? All right. Okay. Obviously, we all know this. This is and he had to make sure he reiterates this. The thing is that how is it going to prove that there's no throne in the holy place? All right. Okay. Now he goes and says, well, Ellen White says, that when Jesus, the mercy seat and the ark in the most holy place is the dwelling place of the Father, right? Okay. All right, we'll go to the for above the mercy seat and the bowed worshiping angels dwelt the glory of the holiest, glory upon which no man might look and live. On the one day of the year appointed for ministry in the most holy place, the high priest with trembling entered God's presence. Right? It is the presence of God that dwelt the glory of the holiest, right? The glory of the Father above the mercy seat, where clouds of incense. So he says, well, see, Ellen White says that the throne of God is in the most holy place. And beyond the second veil was the holy Shekinah, the visible manifestation of God's glory, before which none of but the high priest could enter and live. The matchless splendor of the earthly tabernacle reflected to human vision the glories of that heavenly temple, whereas Christ, our forerunner, ministers before us, before the throne of God. Right? The mercy seat is the throne of God, and it's in the Most holy place, right? These are all Ellen White quotes. And these quotes were used by Ballenger, right? To show that even Ellen White says most holy place is in the most holy place is the throne, is where the throne of God is, right? Okay, sorry, let me see, right? All right, then he goes on. Nowhere in the scriptures are we taught that the throne of God dwelt in the first apartment. Wow, okay. He says, nowhere in the scripture, either of the earthly or heavenly sanctuary. The earthly sanctuary was a shadow of the heavenly, right? That's correct. And the reason why the shadow throne was in the second apartment in that sanctuary is that the real throne was in the second apartment of the real sanctuary in heaven. It therefore follows that since Christ at his ascension sat down as priest in his Father's throne in heavenly sanctuary, he must have entered into the Holy of Holies within the veil at that time. Yeah, we obviously can see his logic here, right? So our goal is to actually prove that there's a throne in the holy place, right? Okay, now he goes and shows what the pioneers were teaching, right? This is what the pioneers were teaching. Specifically, well, I got this because it's easy now to look at the pioneers' teaching. Specifically, John Nevin Andrews, right? The sanctuary and the Bible, right? Thus, when John looked into the temple of God in heaven, he saw the Father sitting upon the throne, and before the throne were 7 lamps burning, right? In this place also we saw the Son of God. Before the throne also stood the golden altar of incense. These things do clearly mark the first apartment of the heavenly sanctuary. So he says the throne of God is in the first apartment of the heavenly sanctuary based on Revelation 4, Revelation 5, Revelation 8. Right? And we see this line of teaching also with S.N. Haskell, Stephen Haskell, the cross and its shadow. God's presence manifested in the first apartment of the earthly sanctuary was a shadow of the glorious presence, and the throne of the Father in the what? The first apartment. This is what our pioneers were teaching, right? This is what our pioneers were teaching. Okay, this is 1914, 1865. All right, this is Uriah Smith in Looking Unto Jesus. Now, he gives 4 reasons. Now, like Uriah Smith, he will give 4 reasons from the Bible why Adventists teach that the throne of God is in the first apartment of the heavenly sanctuary, right? There's 4 reasons. Okay, and we'll go through that. Let's see. We'll go through that in a little bit later, right? We'll go through that a little bit later. How does Uriah Smith defend that the first apartment has the throne of God there, right? Right. Here's some Ellen White quotes that is used by Ballenger, right? Beyond the inner veil was the Holy of Holies, which centered the symbolic service of atonement and intercession. So, right, the Holy of Holies is where the service of atonement and intercession happens, right? The law of God enshrined within the ark was the great rule of righteousness and judgment. The law pronounced death upon the transgressor. Above the law was the mercy seat, upon which the presence of God was revealed, and from which, by virtue of the atonement, pardon was granted to the repentant sinner. Thus, in the work of Christ for our redemption, symbolized with sanctuary service, mercy and truth are met together. So the throne of God is symbolized by the character of God, which is mercy and truth. And you see mercy and truth with the mercy seat and the 10 Commandments. So the throne of God has to show mercy and truth, right? It has to show righteousness and peace, right? Beyond the second veil, the sacred ark with its mystic cherubim, and above it the holy Shekinah. the visible manifestation of Jehovah's presence, all but a dim reflection of the glories of the temple of God in heaven. So this, you can see, it has to be that in the most holy place, there has to be the temple. It has to be a throne of God, which has the what? Which has the character of mercy and truth, righteousness and peace, and we see that symbolized in the ark on earth, right? Okay. All right, this is obviously Ellen White quotes, as the bow in the cloud is formed by the union of the sunlight and the shower, so the rainbow encircling the throne represents the combined power of mercy and justice. It is not justice alone that is to be maintained, for this would eclipse the glory of the rainbow of promise above the throne. Men could see only the penalty of the law. Were there no justice, no penalty, there would be no stability to the government of God. The government of God is a representation of the law of God, which is the character of God, which is mercy and justice, mercy and the law, right? Righteousness and peace. So that is symbolized by the throne, right? Yeah. Okay. And obviously we see that in the most holy place. And so what did Ellen White say? Okay. Then I was shown that the commandments of God, the 10 commandments, and the natural law, the 10 commandments and the natural law, and the testimony of Jesus Christ, which is the testimony of Jesus Christ. What is the testimony of Jesus Christ? The spirit of prophecy, relating to the shut door, could not be separated, and that the time for the commandments of God to shine out with all their importance, and for God's people to be tried on the Sabbath truth, was when the door was opened in the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary, where the ark is, in which are contained the 10 commandments. Okay, so the people of God can only be what? Can only be tested on the 10 commandments, specifically the Sabbath. So she's talking about what here? She's talking about the Sunday law. The Sunday law has to happen during the time after the door to the most holy place is open, right? The Sunday law has to only happen after people understand the 10 commandments, right? When they have to understand fully that it's the law of God, then you can be tested on it. You can't be tested on something you don't know, right? So you have to understand that you have to be able to see where the 10 commandments is. It's in the most holy place. You have to understand that the 10 commandments has the 4th commandment, and to be able to follow that, you have to understand it. And to understand it is because the door is opened. And the door was not open until 1844. And at that time, the door to the holy place was closed. Right? Then Jesus rose up and shut the door of the holy place. Right? Okay. All right. So this is the argument now that Ballenger gives. Right? We should read this and let's see if we can actually defend it now. If God moved his throne into the first apartment at the ascension of Christ and left the sacred ark enshrining his law and covered by the mercy seat, did he move the center of salvation away from the law and mercy seat into another apartment? So he says, where is the mercy and the law and where? In the first apartment that you Seventh-day Adventists are teaching, if the throne of God is also in the first apartment, where is the what? Where is the law and the mercy there? Did God minister pardon for 18 centuries from a throne which was not the mercy seat, but which was separated from that mercy seat by a separating veil? Did God minister the gospel for 18 centuries from a seat whose foundation was not his eternal law? From a throne which was divorced from that law by a veil of separation? So was his throne in the holy place, was it separate from the ark, which had the mercy seat? Did God pardon sin from another seat than the one which is the habitation of justice and judgment? If God could minister the gospel for 18 centuries divorced from the law, why can he not continue to do it, as taught by the no-law advocates? There's no law, no mercy. There's no ark, no mercy seat, no 10 commandments, if he's sitting on the throne in the holy place. You see this, his argument? Actually, pretty compelling. Did Christ as high priest plead his blood for 18 centuries before a throne whose foundation was not the broken law which demanded the transgressor's blood? It's a broken law. Wow. Has to be associated with the law. And the law is in the most holy place. Did Christ minister his blood before a throne where mercy and truth did not meet together? And where righteousness and peace did not kiss each other? If Adventists are teaching that the throne is in the holy place, where is the ark in the holy place? Where is the mercy and truth in the holy place? Right? That is what he's that's his argument. Does the reader not see that this doctrine, which moves the throne from the Holy of Holies into the first apartment, divorces God and his Son from the mercy seat and the law, and changes the center of God's government and gospel from the mercy-covered law in the Holy of Holies to the first apartment, which according to the type never contained either law or mercy seat, and that for a period of 1800 years? All right. Okay. How do you counter this? How are we going to say, okay, all right, our duty with this Bible study is to prove that there is mercy and justice in the holy place. So that's our duty, right? That's our duty. Because if we are going to stand with the pioneers and teach that there is a throne in the holy place, we also have to prove that that throne has the characteristics of mercy and justice. Correct? Make sense? Right? It has to. All right. The problem is that nobody actually have done it. Nobody had done it. Nobody could actually, even the pioneers back then, he challenged the pioneers and says, where is the mercy and justice in the holy place? During the last 4 years, I have laid this difficulty before the leading men of the denomination, and no one has ventured an explanation. No one has dared to say that when the throne was moved out of the first apartment of the ark and law went with it, and on the other hand, no one has dared to affirm that the law and mercy seat were deserted, left behind the Holy of Holies, while the gospel was ministered for 1800 years from a seat which was not the mercy seat, and from a throne divorced from the divine law by a separating veil. Reader, if you accept this plain, thus saith the Lord, you need not tamper with the throne of the infinite, but leave it in the Holy of Holies above the law, the great center of work for man's redemption, where the whole testimony of Scripture places it. Nobody could actually prove that there is mercy and justice in the holy place. Where are the symbols of mercy and justice in the holy place? Right? It has to be associated with the throne of God, because the throne of God has to be in the holy place. So obviously, our pioneers saw the throne of God in the holy place. All right. Okay. All right. Anybody want to kind of like say which verse did Ballenger not proof text also to show that there is a throne in the holy place? Right? Anybody remember? What verse? You saw the verses that he proof text. Which verse did he not proof text to show that the throne is also in the holy place? All right. Okay, we'll get that. Okay. All right. All right. This is the arguments that our pioneers always use, and this is basically if we want to teach about investigative judgment, right? What do we use? We use these verses, right? Revelation 4. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. I said, oh, see, there you go. There's the candlestick is before the throne. All right? The candlestick is before the throne. So therefore, the throne has to be in the holy place. Right? This is what we always use. Right? And this is what also used by our pioneers. Right? Revelation 8 verse 3. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense. So this is the altar of incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. So here we go. Okay, here we go. The altar of incense in the holy place is before the throne. Now Ballenger goes, wait a minute. Did you forget Exodus 40 verse 5? And thou shalt set the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the testimony. The Bible says that the ark of the testimony is before the altar of gold of incense is before the ark of the testimony. So this is how the sanctuary was built on earth, right? Because physically it's actually close, right? But there is a veil between. So this is the altar of incense. This is the ark, but in the middle is a veil. But that altar of incense is actually before the ark of the testimony. So when he says it's before, then he says, oh, you know what? John must mean that is actually near the what? Near the ark, right? See the 7 lamps there before, they're near the ark of the testimony, right? The altar of incense, it's near the ark of the testimony, right? Okay. All right, this is what Ballenger was saying. You know, remember, we always use these Revelation 4 and Revelation 8 to show that the throne is also in the holy place, right? Now here's another common way, and which is used by Uriah Smith and all our pioneers to teach about the investigative judgment and when it happened, right? Revelation 11 verse 15 and 19. And the 7th angel sounded, right? So the 7th trumpet blows, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of the world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever, right? And we jump down to verse 19. And the temple of God was open in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. So the most holy place was shown because the door to the most holy place was opened. At what time? When the 7th angel sounded. All right? When the 7th angel sounded. All right. Okay. When did that happen? All right. Okay. 7th angel sounded. All right. We know our pioneers teach. When did the 7th angel sound it? According to the pioneers. According to the pioneers. When did the 7th trumpet blow? According to the pioneers. Anybody remember? 1844. How did they figure that? How did they figure that? All right. And I beheld the thrones were cast down. This is now we go to Daniel 7. And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the ancients of days did sit. Okay. I beheld till the thrones were cast down. Why is it the thrones were cast down and the ancient of days did sit on it? Is there multiple thrones? Why is it used as plural thrones? Did the Father sit on multiple thrones? Now, this is not difficult to understand that this is plural, majestic plural, right? Something that is so majestic that even us who live in the countries of Asia, when we want to say something that is very important, we say it in the plural sense of the word. Right? It is majestic, and because we use it in the plural sense. So this throne is so majestic that it's called thrones. Just like when you say Elohim, right? Just when you say Holy of Holies, it becomes plural because it is the most, right? It is the most majestic, right? So the thrones, the majestic throne was cast down. What does cast down mean? It's actually the cast down in the Aramaic, which Daniel was written in, is Aramaic, is the word rimah, or to set. So the majestic throne was set, right? And the Father sit on it. To do what? With the angels. To set the judgment and open the books, right? To start investigative judgment, right? Right. This is Daniel 7. So the Father does an investigative judgment, right? And what is the Father looking for? You remember, what does the Father look for? When the Father does an investigative judgment, Matthew 22, what does the Father look for? Father looks for what? To be able to enter into the marriage. What do you have to have? What is the Father looking for? He looks at all the people who wants to enter into marriage. What does he look for? A white robe, right? He's looking for a white robe, the perfection of Christ. That's what he's looking for, right? But what does Jesus do? And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the cloud. So Jesus came with the cloud and came to the Ancient of Days. Why? Because Jesus had to move from one place to another place to come to the Ancient of Days, right? And they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion, glory, and kingdom. When was the dominion, glory, and kingdom given to Jesus? At the end of the time when he finished his ministration as a priest. Then he will receive his dominion, glory, and kingdom, and all his people will serve him. That's when his enemies will be made his footstools, right? Right. When does this happen? Daniel 7. When does that? For Adventists, we teach that the investigative judgment happens here. When does this happen? We go to Daniel 7 verse 8, right? It is when the little horn plucks up the three horns that speaks great things. And the little horn's time ends when? 1798. So this cannot happen before 1798. It has to happen after 1798. This is what our Adventist theology about the investigative judgment. It has to happen after the little horn is revealed, right? Is when the man of sin is his mask is uncovered, right? So that when the whole world will understand, and then the judgment can begin, right? And it has to happen after the 1290 years, right? Okay, that's Daniel 7 verse 8. It has to happen after that, right? Okay, that's our line of reasoning, okay, of why. But there has to be some other reason, because this line of reasoning does not show that there is mercy and there is what? There's no mercy and there's no justice in the holy place. We have to find it associated with the throne that is in the holy place, right? Okay. Now this is A.F. Ballenger again. It is argued that inasmuch as the candlestick and the altar of incense were always in the first apartment of the early sanctuary, right here, right? Therefore, when these were seen by John in the heavenly sanctuary, he must have been looking into the first apartment, and he saw the throne at the same time. The throne must have been in the first apartment. Okay, this is the logic of our pioneers. But that logic is faulty. Right? This is what Ballenger is saying. That logic is faulty. One might just as consistently argue that inasmuch as the second apartment was always the abode of the ark or typical throne, therefore when John saw the altar and the candlestick at the same time that he saw the throne, they must have been in the second apartment. But both conclusions are wrong, for both contradict the type, because in the type, the ark or the typical throne was never seen in the first apartment, and the altar and the candlestick was never seen in the second apartment. So they're separated. They were never mixed. All right? They were never mixed. Right? This is what Adventists cannot reconcile. Right? Okay. All right. So, which I have you here the verse that is not included in the proof text of A.F. Ballenger of showing where the throne is. Right? It's in Isaiah 14 verse 13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I, right? Lucifer. I, Lucifer, will ascend into heaven. I will exalt what? My throne above the stars of God. Who's the stars of God? Who's the stars of God? It's the angels. I'm going to put my throne above the angels. And I will sit also, right? I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. All right? What is the mount of congregation on the sides of the north that Lucifer wants to put his throne on? Also. Because that's also the throne of God. He also wants to sit on that throne, right? Which is the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. All right? He also wants to sit on that throne because that is the throne of God. And where is that throne? And he put the table in the tent of a congregation upon the side of the tabernacle northward without the veil. So where is that? In the sides of the north, in the tabernacle. Where is that? That's the table of showbread, right? And the side of the tabernacle northward. And he set the bread in order upon it before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So the mount of congregation in the sides of the north is the throne of God. And it's also where Lucifer wants to sit, right? In the tabernacle, in the northward part of the tabernacle is the table of showbread, right? The table of showbread. Okay, let's look at the table of showbread. Thou shalt also make me a table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, and make thereunto a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt make unto it a border of a hand breadth round about, and thou shalt make a golden crown to the border thereof round about. So how many crowns of gold are there? There's 2 crowns of gold on it, right? There's 2 crowns of gold. And thou shalt make it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings in the 4 corners that are on the 4 feet thereof. Over against the border shall the rings of the place of the staves bear this table, right? And you're going to make, and they have to make what? They have to make dishes and spoons and bowls to put on it, right? Of gold. And they shall set upon the table showbread. So you put on the table of showbread are 2 gold crowns. There's also dishes, spoons, and covers and bowls. And on it are the showbread. All right, showbread. And this is on the in the northward part of the sanctuary, right? And there's 2 gold crowns. Leviticus 24. What is the showbread? Okay, there's more details about the showbread. And they shall take fine flour and bake 12 breads. And you have to make 12 breads thereof, and 2/10 deals shall be in 1 cake. Actually, 2/10 deal is a large amount of flour. So it's actually quite large. So for some pictures that shows it that it's pretty small, it's actually probably incorrect. It's actually quite large, right? But anyway, there's 12 cakes of it. And they shall set them in 2 rows, 6 on 1 row, and upon the pure table before the bread. And thou shalt put pure frankincense upon each row. So on the bread, what do you put? There's 2 rows of bread, and on top of it you put frankincense. And what do you do? That it may be on the bread for a memorial, even an offering made by fire. So that you will eventually, what will you do with that? You will burn it as an offering. So you have an offering of flour and you have an offering of frankincense. Okay, now we're starting to say, oh, wait a minute, this jogs my memory. There is an offering of flour and frankincense in the tabernacle service. All right? All right? This should jog our memory about the meat offering. Okay? Every Sabbath he shall set it in order before the Lord continually, being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant. And shall be Aaron's and Aaron's sons. They shall eat it in the holy place. And it is most holy upon him of the offerings of the Lord made by fire by a perpetual statute. Right? So what happens to the bread and the frankincense? You leave it for a whole week. And that bread becomes stale after a whole week. Right? And what do? That bread is eaten by the priests and his sons. Right? By the priests and his sons. And what happens to the frankincense? The frankincense is burned as an offering, right? So you have a flour and frankincense offering that is burned, right? Where do we see that? Okay, we've seen it because we studied all the offerings, right? In Leviticus 6. And this is the law of the meat offering. We see the meat offering, okay? The sons of Aaron shall offer it before the Lord, right? The sons of Aaron. Before the altar. And he shall take of it his handful, and the flour. So he takes a flour of the meat offering, and of the oil thereof, and all the frankincense. And he also uses frankincense, right? So the flour and the oil is used to make into cakes, right? And you use frankincense, which is upon the meat offering, and shall burn it upon the altar for a what? A sweet savor. All right, a sweet savor. Why? It is supposed to be a memorial unto the Lord. And the remainder thereof shall Aaron and his sons eat. Right? Aaron and his sons have to do? They had to eat it. With unleavened bread shall it be eaten in the holy place, in the court of the tabernacle of the congregation. It has to be eaten in the courtyard, right? By Aaron's and his sons. It shall not be baked with leaven. I have given it to them for their portion of my offerings made by fire. It is most holy, as is the sin offering and as the trespass offering. It is just as holy as the sin offering and the trespassing offering, but it is not a trespass offering, and is not a sin offering, right? It is a meat offering, right? It is a meat offering, and it is flour made into cakes with what? With frankincense. That's the symbol of the 12 showbreads, the showbread and the frankincense, which is on the altar of burnt incense, right? We see that? It is a what? So the bread and the frankincense is an offering that when it is sacrificed becomes a sweet savor unto God. All right? So this is what is seen on the altar of incense. Okay. All right, what does this mean? All right, let's see what Ellen White says. The showbread was kept ever before the Lord as a perpetual offering. Thus it was part of a daily sacrifice. It was called showbread, or bread of the presence, because it was ever before the face of the Lord. It was an acknowledgement of man's dependence upon God for both temporal and spiritual food, and it is received only through the mediation of Christ. God had fed Israel in the wilderness with bread from heaven, and they were still dependent upon his bounty, both for temporal and food and spiritual blessings. Both the manna and the showbread pointed to Christ. So the showbread pointed to Christ, who is the living bread. I am the living bread. John 6, verse 48 to 51. Frankincense. Okay, what about the frankincense? Okay, so the bread is Christ. When the bread was removed every Sabbath to be replaced by fresh loaves, the frankincense was burned upon the altar as a memorial before God. And when the frankincense is burned, it is a sweet savor unto God. Okay, when you see sweet savor, you understand sin offerings are not sweet savor. It's not a sweet savor. It is the offerings, right? The gifts that are a sweet savor. Why? The sweet savor that is being brought, like the meat offering, the frankincense that is burned, it is a sweet savor because it reminds the people of the sacrifice of Jesus. It is not a sin offering, right? It is not for them to confess their sin, no. It is for them to always remind themselves about how Jesus, for them at the time of the Aaronic tabernacle, it is to remind them of what Jesus will do for them, right? He will die for them. It was for us to study this. We have to realize that this is to remind us of the sacrifice of Christ, right? Okay, and that becomes a sweet savor unto God, right? And he shall take of it his handful, and the flour of the meat offering, and of the oil thereof, and all the frankincense which is upon the meat offering, he shall burn it upon the altar for a sweet savor, even the memorial of it unto the Lord. And the remainder thereof shall Aaron and his sons eat. See, it has to be eaten. With unleavened bread, even shall it be eaten in the holy place, in the court of the tabernacle of the congregation, they shall eat it, right? So the frankincense is burned as a sweet savor, right? And it is to remind them of Jesus, right? Everything points to Jesus. All right. Neither pray I for those alone, but for them also, which shall believe in me through their word, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, and they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me. Right? It reminds me of this text Why does the high priest have to eat the bread? What does the 12 loaves of bread mean? What does it symbolize? The 12 tribes of Israel, right? So, the 12 tribes of Israel is symbolized by the bread. And the priest, which symbolizes Jesus, Jesus eats the bread. So what does it mean that the tribes of Israel is actually ingested by Jesus? It goes into Jesus, right? They may be one in us and I in them, right? So when we have Jesus in us, Jesus will have us in him. When we are united with Jesus by eating the bread of life, by understanding, and it becomes a part of us and it changes our character, we are in Jesus and Jesus is in us. That's why the bread is eaten by the priest, right? Because now the congregation, God's people who have studied, have eaten of the bread, have partaken of his divine nature, can actually become part of Jesus, right? So they will become part of Jesus. Jesus will actually eat the bread also, right? They in us and I in them and thou in me, right? So, right. So the 12 loaves of bread there, the 12 breads represent the 12 tribes, right? Also, obviously, it has to represent the 12 disciples also. You know why? Because the 12 disciples eat the bread, and Jesus says what? Eat this bread. It symbolizes me also, right? So it symbolizes the 12 disciples, right? Does it also mean the 12 tribes that overcome of Revelation 7? What are the 12 tribes that overcome? It's the 144,000. Because when they have Christ in them, then they can be in Christ as well, right? So that's how. So when we just restrict it just to the 12 tribes of Israel, no, I think it has a deeper meaning. It also has to include the 12 tribes of Revelation 7, which is the 144,000. Because the 144,000 will understand and eat the bread of life, and Jesus will become a part of their nature so that they can be a part of Jesus. So that's why the priest also eats the bread, right? Yeah. Okay. So how can we prove that the throne of God is in the holy place? Because the throne of God is where also? The table of showbread. That's the throne of God. Why? Because it has 2 crowns on it. It has 2 crowns on it. And on it is the mount of congregation. What's the mount of congregation? God's people. There's the mount of congregation is what? Is those 2 loaves of bread, 2 stacks of bread. That's the mount of congregation on the side of the north, right? Okay. And what happens to those who are sealed and have overcome? What happens in Revelation 3 verse 21? Jesus promised, for those who have overcome, what? I will have you to sit on my throne. So the 12 tribes that are sealed, the 144,000 that have overcome what is their promise? They are going to sit on the throne of God. Don't you see that? Isn't it? That's the 12 loaves of bread on the throne of God right there. That's why there's 12 of them, because those who are overcome and have been sealed are the 12 tribes of Revelation 7, is the 144,000. All right? Okay. But where's the law and the mercy though? Right. Okay, so we can see, all right, where's the law and the mercy? I was wrestling with this for a few days. I said, okay, I'm going to bring this, I'm going to bring this study. As you can see, I had this in my mind last week, but I was still wrestling with it because where is the law and the mercy in the table of showbread? All right. Ephesians 5, verse 1 and 2. But ye therefore followers of God as dear children, and walk in love, as Christ also have loved us, and hath given himself for us as an offering and a sacrifice, for a sweet-smelling savor. Jesus is the offering and the sacrifice for a sweet-smelling savor. Jesus is the what? Jesus is the bread and the frankincense. It is the offering and sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling savor. That's on the table of showbread, right? That's on the table of showbread. It is the offering and sacrifice of God, which is Jesus. And it becomes a sweet-smelling savor. Now, what did Ellen White say? By his life and his death, Christ proved that God's justice did not destroy his mercy, but that sin could be forgiven, and that the law is righteous and can be perfectly obeyed. Satan's charges were refuted. God had given man unmistakable evidence of his love. Right? So what is the proof of God's law being righteous and his mercy being offered unto us, and of his love and his character? What is the proof? The life and death of Christ. And how is it symbolized? By the bread and the frankincense. The bread and the frankincense on the table of showbread, which has 2 golden crowns on it. And those bread are like the mounts of congregation, right? On the sides of the north is a symbol of the life and death of Christ, which is a proof of the God's justice and mercy, God's law and love. All right? Yeah. Wow. When you realize this, then you can actually refute the what? The attacks of A.F. Ballenger. And even the denomination leaders back then, they says, "Oh, we believe that there's a throne in the holy place." But to defend against that the attack of Ballenger, nobody could do it. It was something that they cannot defend, to see the symbolism of the mercy and justice of God, the character of God which is on his throne. So if we can see that the throne of God, which is also the symbol that is seen of the table of showbread, with the showbread and the frankincense being the life and death of Christ as a sacrifice unto God and a sweet-smelling savor, which proves that his law is just and righteous, right? And his mercy is offered unto us to show his love. Then we can see that the throne of God is also in the holy place. So that we can see that when David said that after that Jesus went to heaven and sat at the right throne of God, and his enemies will be his footstool. His enemies will be his footstool when he has a people, a dominion that he will get back. And his enemies will be his footstool at the end of his priestly ministration in heaven, right? But in the meantime, he started in the throne where the throne of God is, which is the table of showbread, where you see the mercy and justice with the offerings of the bread and frankincense, right? Wow. All right. So I think that we're able to see. I hope it's been a blessing for us to see this and show about the work of God. I mean the work of Jesus in the holy place and the most holy place, and that this understanding will be able to be used to defend our faith, right? To defend what makes us a people, a different people, because this will be, if this was used as an attack in the past, it will be used as an attack again in the future. But now, I hope that we have more ammunition to be able to defend it from the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. All right? And that is a more sure word of prophecy. All right.